Nowadays, science has found out that DNA is not that fixated in its structure, but is malleable. So any experience that we have in our life, which can be a very joyful, beautiful experience or traumatic experience, on some level gets stored within our DNA. And so that gets passed on from generation to generation if we don't heal it or bring it into wholeness or into harmony. And if we look at it, indigenous cultures, also the Buddhist philosophy, they say that if we do our personal healing work, we heal 7 generations into the past. And what we heal within ourselves also ripples 7 generations into the future. The geography of the planet, the geology, holds the memory of the past still in the present. If we don't harmonize certain traumas, certain experiences that happened in our lives, but also the imprints that reside within the land, those imprints still hold these vibrations. Like a lot of people, for example, I heard that have been to, for example, Auschwitz concentration camps, they just enter that area and they feel that vibration of death and of suffering, right? Because it's held in those places on vibrational levels. So if we heal ourselves, if we bring ourselves into a state of harmony, it ripples through these energy lines of the planet and brings these energetic reflections within the geography of the planet into harmony.
Welcome, Shamir, to the Light Dump. How lovely that you're here. Thank you. Now, my dear, you come with an intriguing, can I say it, job or gift description. You are available to us all for multidimensional embodiment activations, multidimensional embodiment mentoring, ancestral healing, sound healing, transformational breath work, craniosacral therapy, and I suspect there's a whole lot more. So that's wonderful, and let's unpack that a little bit and let us know what that is all about. So let us all know what a multi-dimensional embodiment activation is with you and the reasons why we might come to you for that.
Thank you, Susie, first of all, for welcoming me. It's beautiful to be here and have this conversation. And thank you for diving straight into multidimensional embodiment. Where to start? So we as human beings perceive ourselves usually as physical beings, right? With a mind and a body and emotions. And we grew up with the notion of linear time, where we have a past that is gone, we have a future that's yet to come, and we live in this present moment. But beyond that physical comprehension of our reality, there are more subtle layers of our reality where we tap into energy, where we tap into the vibrational reality of our existence, where everything is a reflection of frequency. And when we go into these more subtle layers of our existence, we also recognize that time is not linear, but the past and the future exist in this present now moment as well. And we are able to access that. And from that perspective, us living our human lives in our individual incarnations, we have our own stories, but these stories are connected to our ancestral history, are connected to collective human history, are connected to past lives. And the multidimensional embodiment, from the way that I understand it, is to tap into these aspects that go beyond our individual and personal identity into vaster concepts of reality. And I think it is important, or from my experience as well, it is important to have a reference to these vaster aspects of our existence, because they can mirror us, our reality back to us, and we can learn to understand ourselves better, how we carry certain patterns, how we
Mm.
carry certain forms of behaviors, how we
Mm.
maybe carry certain weight that has been passed on from our ancestors. And in the multidimensional embodiment activations is like a reading or transmission that I share with people, so they can understand how their individual existence is interwoven and intertwined with much vaster aspects of our reality. And then we work through sound, vibration, and frequency on clearing traumas, clearing fragmentations, harmonizing our energy field, and then activating our potential. So this work happens on a DNA level. Some people might have heard of the Akashic records. So it also is a rewriting within the Akashic records, and it has effects on our physical, emotional, mental, and energetic embodiment. That's maybe how I would describe it.
Beautiful description. And I think there's a lot of talk out there of changing our frequency, and there's a lot of perhaps understanding for some of that and lack of it for others. And to wrap our heads around frequency and us being frequency beings, I think that can be quite hard for people to do unless you sort of bring it down to sort of nuts and bolts. For instance, is if someone can remember the day that they were the happiest, the most joyful day, the moment they held their child for the first time, that feeling is frequency, that experience is frequency. So to experience frequency is the key, do you think? To experience it, feel it?
Yes, to
Yeah.
yes, to feel frequency and understand. I mean, we all probably studied physics in school to
Mm.
some level, and we learned we have atoms made of electrons, protons, and neutrons, and these are tiny, tiny particles that are vibrating in different frequencies. And actually, there's a lot of space between all of these particles. And yet, although there's space, we perceive these atoms, if they come together, create molecules and structures, we experience dense matter.
Mm.
So that understanding, and then connecting it, as you said, to different emotions, to different forms of our embodiment. When we are in joy, there's a different vibration that we carry compared to when we are in grief or in anger. So these emotional reflections represent these different layers of vibrations and frequencies, but there's so many intricate and subtle layers that communicate with us, that we communicate through our human embodiment. And just opening our mind to that perception, I think, is the first step. And then observing our inner states and how do we react in different environments. How does our body feel if we are in the forest? Because the forest and the trees, right, they carry a different vibration than, like, let's say London downtown, for example. Because the trees, they are not stressed, they don't need to rush anywhere. But in London downtown, everybody is busy, everybody needs to get somewhere and get a job done. So that hustle and bustle is a reflection of a vibration and frequency that we will feel as human beings if we are in that environment. But if we move to a different environment, we'll feel a different vibration and frequency. And it's very much in the English language, we say, we express a lot of things relating to resonance, vibration, and frequency. Like we say, oh, I vibe with something. Again,
Yeah.
that's about
Yeah.
vibration. Or
Yeah.
something resonates with me. Again, the word resonance relates to vibration. So we use it in our language naturally, these reflections of sound, vibration, and frequency.
Nice one, Shamir. I think people will really understand that, because I know I get often asked, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by change my frequency? And yet it's actually very simple. We walk into a room and we can feel when someone's in a bad mood. We feel it. We actually can pick up on it. So we are emitting and reading frequency all the time, and yet we don't perhaps perceive it as that way. So the perception, as you say, is the start point, that we can and do that all the time. And then the idea that we can shift it to a better place, perhaps, if you want to say a more aligned, harmonious, as you say, place is quite amazing. And that is what you do for people. Am I correct? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is how I work in different ways, through sound, expressed through my voice, through mantra, through different instruments, but also guiding and mentoring people how they can do it themselves through different meditation practices, through breath practices. Yeah, there's a wide way of how we can shift our vibration. And as you share this, for people that come across these concepts for the first time, it might sound a little bit woo-woo, but if we break it down to very simple terms, it's not woo-woo at all. It's actually very simple physics and mechanics of creation, mechanics of our reality that we live in and exist in.
Yeah, that's very true. And the concept of time is another one. I think people find that quite hard to wrap their head around. We've been very indoctrinated with a very linear perception of time. And so the concept of having a multidimensional existence in the same moment is kind of quite hard to wrap your head around. I actually find it quite easy. Isn't that interesting? I find that almost easier than the lineal
I
time.
understand.
Yeah, I almost find that
Yeah.
easier, but many people don't. And so, do you think it offers a gateway for change, for instant change, actually?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I believe so, definitely. Like, the concept of linear time can be a tricky one, but like if we look at the night sky, for example, right? We see stars, and many of those stars might not even exist anymore. It's just the light that is still traveling our way to planet Earth. Again, if we look at a bit deeper layers of physics, like quantum theory or theory of relativity, we can see that what we perceive in this now moment are wavelengths, right? Again, frequencies or vibrations that travel through time. And it is not that everything is existent in this now moment, but it might have happened a long time ago, but we are perceiving it in this now moment. So it's a very mysterious reality and magical reality. And for me, that makes our existence more exciting, more playful than the linear, very three-dimensional, structural perception of reality. And it makes more sense as well to me through the experiences that I had, the investigations that I did in life for myself and for collective planetary consciousness. So it's a beautiful endeavor to explore these other realms of consciousness and existence. And you shared that we live in this vibrational reality, right? Everything is a reflection of frequency. If we look at our planet, we have the electromagnetic frequency that the Earth runs on. We have the North Pole and we have the South Pole, right? So everything is a reflection of that frequency. And if we learn to engage in that way, I feel life can become much richer.
Yes, exactly. And we forget too that the South Pole and the North Pole, the electromagnetic, they flip sometimes. They quite naturally flip. We forget that and go, oh my gosh, how could that happen? Well, it does, and it always has. We can flip too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. And so I'd be really interested to hear even some of the examples you've had of people having that aha moment, maybe, where you've worked with them and there's suddenly an embodiment or of the realization of this. Have you experienced, I mean, you've probably experienced it yourself, of course, because that's why you're here, but also in working with other people, having that happen.
Yes, like it's quite simple. Like when we work with sound, acoustic sound, it's very easy for people to sense, oh, it's not just the vibration that I can hear with my acoustic sense, with my ears, but actually, if I listen through my embodiment, I can feel the vibration within my body. Sometimes people see colors, sometimes the sound journeys take people into their childhood. They see or feel or experience childhood memories. Sometimes it takes them into past lives, but it's very simple. Like if we look at sound that is transmitted above a surface of water, we see that the sound creates ripples within the water.
Mm,
And when we look at our human embodiment, right, we are made of 60 to 70 to 80% water.
mm,
And so the sound vibration of an instrument, of a drum, of a voice naturally creates ripples within the fluids of our body. And
mm,
if we can use those vibrations intentionally in the right way, that's how we can maybe clear blockages, clear fragmentations, harmonize energy circuits. And it is a very visceral experience. It's nothing mystical. It can be mystical, depends what we understand as mysticism,
yeah.
but it's a very visceral experience at the same time. And for many people that experience, for example, a sound journey for the first time, it's a big aha moment, and it's like,
Mm,
all right, I understand now what sound is about, what this reality is about, and it demystifies a lot of what people might be skeptical towards in the first place because they can't comprehend it, or it comes from maybe an esoteric perspective that through our three-dimensional education we might maybe reject. But then
mm.
when we experience it on a visceral level, it changes the whole game.
And I think for anyone listening who is going, okay, I kind of get it, but I don't. Remember that sad song that every time you hear, you cry. You don't know why. It might be associated to a certain time in your life, or it just might it might activate the feeling of tears and grief or joy, opposite as well. And we know that happens. I don't think there's a person on earth that hasn't had that happen to. They've heard a voice or a piece of music that has moved them emotionally. It happens. So this is exactly the same, really. But as you say, the intention is everything for taking us on a transformational journey. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. When you shared about like the sad songs, I mean, it's
Mm,
very clear. We see the difference of like a heavy metal concert
yeah.
and classical music or jazz. Each genre invokes a different sentiment within our
Mm.
body, right? And that is just a simple reflection of how sound and vibration interacts with us and changes our inner state.
So everyone get out there and do a sound journey is what I would recommend. Absolutely, and come to this man as one option. Ancestral healing, I am kind of interested in because I do understand there's a potential due to multidimensionality that you can heal yourself and thereby heal the past as well as the future. Is that, does that happen? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, from my experience, it's definitely a possibility, and it happens a lot. Um, when I grew up in school, we learned about DNA, and what I learned was we get the DNA of our father and of our mother. That makes up our DNA, and there's how we roll in life. Nowadays, science has found out that DNA is not um, that fixated in its structure, but is malleable. So any experience that we have in our life, which can be a very joyful, beautiful experience or traumatic experience, on some level gets stored within our DNA. And so that gets passed on from generation to generation if we don't heal it or bring it into wholeness or into harmony. And if we look at indigenous cultures, also the Buddhist philosophy, they say that if we do our personal healing work, we heal 7 generations into the past.
Mhm.
And what we heal within ourselves also ripples 7 generations into the future. So that is a reflection from various cultures that we have received. And I personally had experiences and also with clients that I've worked with where in healing sessions, got taken to experiences that my great grandfather actually had. And there was unexpressed anger and a sentiment of sadness that he wasn't able to release. And so that was a weight that had been passed on to me. And through that healing journey, I really connected to his experience, was able to release that anger and the grief, and felt a big liberation within myself. In another healing experience, I went through quite a challenging time, and then I asked the question, why is this so challenging? And then I heard the voice saying, because you're not only healing yourself, but you're healing your ancestors. And then I saw the face of my father, my grandfather, and a few other older men that I perceived as my ancestors.
Mhm.
And then I had a big visceral release, and then suddenly that challenge that I was experiencing in my body dissipated as well. So I've experienced it in personal ways, and clients that I've worked with as well have experienced similar things. So that ancestral is very clear. Maybe I can share because it's very much related to my personal quest in my life. I have Indian heritage, my mother from a Sikh family, my father from a Hindu family, but I was born in Singapore, raised in Austria, and then I moved to Bali. Then life spun me on a whirlwind tour, and now I ended up in the UK. And a lot of the journey was to connect to my true self. Because during the time specifically of my great grandparents, grandparents, and parents, it was the time of partition between India and Pakistan. So there was a lot of trauma that happened, and displacement of people. So a lot of my quest was to find my belonging, to find my roots. And of course, one reflection of that is a geographical place, but the other reflection is to find that belonging within oneself as a security, as a groundedness, a grounded embodiment within myself. And since 8 years now, I've been in England, and just by being here, there's been a lot of ancestral healing that has occurred because of the close relationship of the British Empire and India.
Of course.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Mm.
relationship of those
Mm.
countries or nations influence each other
Mm.
very, very strongly. And that relationship influenced the story of my ancestors and so influenced my life. So by coming here to England, I was able to understand a lot about my grandparents, my parents, their journey from India to the West, and was able to heal a lot and bring a lot into harmony for myself.
Gosh, it really makes me think, Shamir, how, people get so hooked into that they're not doing anything for the world. But if we just work on ourselves, we're doing so much, so much. That's enough for
Exactly.
for the entire universe, it's enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that that reflection. around like multidimensional embodiment or
Mm,
sound, vibration, and frequency, or also what we shared now about the ancestral healing. It all ties in into this concept of oneness,
mm,
right? And when I heard about oneness the first time, it was more like a sentimental notion. Oh, yes, we are all one. Let's love each other and treat each other with love and compassion. And that's still very true. But then along the journey, I found out that it's not only a sentimental motion, but literally through vibration and frequency, everything is connected. Everything
mm,
is one. And so if we work on ourselves, if we shift the vibration with ourselves into a more harmonious state, we automatically shift the vibration of the planet in a more harmonious state because we are part of the planet. We are not separate from the planet. So what you share doing that inner work is doing a lot for the collective on the planet
mm.
and beyond, I would say.
Absolutely. And perhaps it saves us from getting too hooked into the mire of everything that is going on around us, which can be a great distraction and a great way to compound core beliefs that have been written that aren't true. Actually, they're not our true self. So yes, get to it, people. Get to just working on yourself. That's all you do in your life. That's the greatest purpose on earth for everyone.
That's the
Yes.
key. That's where everything starts from. And then
Mm,
when we bring ourselves more into harmony, into alignment, then we can maybe take other steps to support people around us or support the environment, whatever our heart is calling for.
yeah. Now, your journey, I'm quite curious as to the journey. I think it sounds like it started way back. You were raised in a spiritual family?
I was raised in Austria,
Mm,
and my parents chose not to settle in India, but to move to a European nation, to a more Western culture.
mm,
And for Indian parents, they were very open to like Western culture and Western society. And I was also raised in a very with a very Western mentality. So my mother, she was born in India, but she was raised in Singapore, which is also a relatively like Western and modern
mm,
society.
mm,
So those were the ideals that they came to Europe with. And the ideals were to give me and my sister what they perceived as a better life, a
yeah.
more developed life. So although it wasn't a religious thing, I was baptized when I was 4 years old into Catholicism. It was more related to the social environment that I was in. So it was, yeah, definitely interesting. And
Mm,
um, my parents, in the essence, they were and are spiritual. My mom has passed, my father is still alive, and my mom, she was a very sensitive, loving person, believed in God, but didn't practice any spirituality active. My father, he was in the past, I think he had a very materialistic mindset. He wanted to succeed coming from India to a
mhm,
Western society. So he wanted to succeed in that Western, more materialistic society. But now somehow through life's experiences, he has turned very much to connect to spirituality, to the
mm,
divine again.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's been a beautiful blessing. So we
Mm,
have evolved together, I would say, definitely.
beautiful.
So that's how I also can perceive these generational connections in my late teenage years. It's clear for me, I want to go to India and find my spiritual teacher. I want to feel and experience related to me as Austrian citizen needing to do either national service or social service. So I ended
Oh,
up
yeah.
doing a year of social service in the children's intensive care unit and was confronted with life and death and prolonged suffering had an experience with a Native American medicine man, a shamanic sweat lodge, and also beyond wanting to connect to my spiritual heritage, I really felt there are different ways of healing. So holistic healing and understanding the reality of this creation, that was my quest from like 18 years onwards. And since then, it's been an exciting adventure where I got initiated in a yogic tradition, in a mystical yogic tradition in my early 20s, studied physiotherapy, studied various energetic healing modalities, craniosacral work, theta healing, transformational breath work, and many more. Then connected to indigenous cultures and indigenous wisdom, traveled all across the planet, and somehow it ties back into like ancestral healing again. Only after my mother passed away, which is now more than 9.5 years ago, and I shared in the beginning she was from a Sikh family.
Mm.
That's when slowly the Sikh culture, which I never paid any attention to, started coming into my life. First through certain prayers and mantras, then by moving here to the UK, through, I don't say it's a coincidence, for me it's more divine synchronicities. Through divine synchronicity, I connected to some deep wisdom keepers of the mystic warrior lineage of the Sikh tradition here in England. And that really accelerated that path for me into that mystic warrior tradition of the Sikh lineage. And it's really interesting, if I may share,
Do.
when I came here from Bali to the UK, uh, connecting to Glastonbury, which is also
Mm.
known as the ancient Isle of Avalon,
Mm.
I connected very deeply to the stories of King Arthur, Excalibur, the Knights of the Round Table, and then step by step getting initiated into the mystic warrior tradition of the Sikh lineage, I realized the parallels of the ancient mythology of these lands, like Excalibur, the Sword of Truth, the Sword of the True King, and the mystic warrior tradition of the Sikh lineage, which holds the same principles. We also honor the sword. The first mantra of the Sikh tradition is a mantra of truth as well. So it's same but different, what many people say. So those principles of honor, of truth, of devotion, not only to something material or to oneself, but devotion to the greater good of all. Devotion to the divine, is these are principles which in essence are in every culture, tradition, or religion. So that is a story how I've ended here in the UK, and I'm doing my work here now, supporting people, individuals, and in groups, and following my own path of the Sikh mystic warrior tradition.
Waheguru. It's a
I
wonderful
do.
Waheguru. That is such a wonderful journey, and it's exciting too because I love the layers that you are drawing off, and and I think that is what is being offered to people today. People like yourself are coming with a vast toolbox that's drawing off many indigenous mystical truths and able to see the oneness within that. And outwardly, you're aligning to the Sikh tradition, but in fact, you've got this full, enriched body of wisdom that you're drawing off.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we are part of everything, right? We are connected with the infinite cosmos, and that is the beautiful thing as well of the Sikh tradition, because now it's known as Sikhism,
Mm.
which is an ism, is turned into a religion. But how it got initiated, it was specifically about not being a religion that separates, because it was during the times where the Mughal emperors from Afghanistan started invading India and conquering India, and they were forcefully converting Hindus to become Muslims. And due, through that conflict, yeah, a lot of suffering occurred. And so the Sikh faith actually rose as a tradition beyond separation of religion,
Mm.
beyond separation of caste, the caste system, which wasn't very strong in India at that point. No separation between gender, recognizing ourselves as one humanity. And so it unites all, and we can learn from so many walks of life, from so many cultures and traditions. And nowadays we are in a world where maybe the differences are used to create more boundaries or borders. But I
Mm.
think we can use these differences to feel more joy and glory and enjoy the multifacetedness and the richness that comes through the differences. And we can learn from each other and through each other.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm also quite keen to discuss with you. You actively work in grid activation. In fact, your entire website's called Grid Activation Work. And tell us a little bit about that and why that is important today.
Yeah, thank you for referring to that. And it connects in again with what we spoke about at the very beginning, like our multidimensional reality, our multidimensional embodiment. So let me explain. The grid lines are the energy lines of the planet, right? Like we have, most people, or I hope many people know that we have like seven main chakras within our central energy channel. And then we have a lot of more subtle energy channels that connect within our embodiment. It's in the fascia, actually, in the connective tissue, where the meridians, that's the name in Chinese, from the Chinese tradition, or the nadis from the yogic tradition, that's where these energy channels run. And in the same way, the earth and land masses hold energy channels and energy circuits, which we know as ley lines or grid lines. Bigger ones known from like the Far Eastern traditions are called dragon lines. The indigenous in Australia call these energy lines that run in the earth, they call them song lines, because they know that the energy travels through sound, vibration, and frequency. So, as I shared, our individual lives, our ancestral lives, collective human history, everything can be mapped out through the geography of the planet. And
Mm.
the geography of the planet, the geology, holds the memory of the past still in the present. If we don't harmonize certain traumas, certain experiences that happened in our lives, but also the imprints that reside within the land, those imprints still hold these vibrations. Like a lot of people, for example, I heard that have been to, for example, Auschwitz concentration camps, they just enter that area and they feel that vibration of death and of suffering,
Mm.
right? Because it's held in those places on vibrational levels. So if we heal ourselves, if we bring ourselves into a state of harmony, it ripples through these energy lines of the planet and brings these energetic reflections within the geography of the planet into harmony. But
Mm.
at the same time, we can work consciously with these energy lines of the planet. Like a lot of people feel called nowadays to travel to sacred sites all across the planet. It could be the Great Pyramids in Egypt, it could be Uluru, Ayers Rock in
Mm.
Australia. A lot of people know Glastonbury as an ancient sacred site here in the UK, or the Sacred Valley, Machu Picchu in Peru.
Mm.
And if we look at these places that have a very ancient history, and we look at the Great Pyramids of Egypt, for example, of Cairo, in Cairo, the way that they are built and how they are aligned with certain celestial constellations,
Mm.
like certain stars, they are aligned with immaculate precision to these celestial constellations. And so, like we see the influence that the moon has on the tides of the
Mhm.
sea, of the ocean, right? So again, looking at the microcosm being a reflection of the macrocosm and the macrocosm being a reflection of the microcosm, we can see that the ancient ones aligned specific places to star constellations. Also, if we look at indigenous cultures and indigenous tribes, they all have a cosmology in their creation story. They know that we as humans here on planet Earth have some form of relationship to the stars. And so working with the grid lines is not only the energy lines that run with the Earth, but is also the energy lines that run within our human body, that run
Mm.
within our DNA, that run in human collective history. From human collective history, maybe they connect to a vaster galactic consciousness, um, with the intention of bringing harmony, is something that is really powerful these days,
Mm.
as the planet is shifting in its electromagnetic frequency, right?
Mm.
The sun is emitting a lot of solar storms and solar flares, and
Mm.
that electromagnetic frequency from the sun is changing the frequency of the planet. There's something called or known as the Schumann resonance,
That's right.
which measures a specific electromagnetic frequency on our planet. And we can see that over the last 10 years, it's been exponentially increasing in a very strong way. So if we tap into that concept of oneness again
Mm.
and work with planetary consciousness, with the grid lines, with our own inner harmonic states, um, there is a lot of shifts that we can support on a personal level and also on a collective level.
Mm.
And my role somewhat, actually, I'm based in Glastonbury, so
Mm.
that is my home base here in Glastonbury, where a lot of grid lines and ley lines intersect. That is also part of my work. Beyond working with humans individually and collectively in groups, I work a lot with the energy that communicates here through the sacred sites here. And a lot of my work has been about clearing and purifying fragmentations that run within the consciousness of the planet. Right now, the systems that are in place don't really serve the greater good of all beings on the planet, right?
Mm.
And if we look again at the history of the British Empire, we can see that the British Empire influenced a lot of the planet. I think there are only a few, and it's a very small amount of nations that weren't invaded by the British Empire. So we can see how from this island here, you being in New Zealand
Mm.
as well, right?
Mm.
Is New
Yes.
Zealand part of the
Yes.
Commonwealth, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, on the other side of the globe,
Yeah.
but still connected with a strong thread to this island here. Yeah,
Mm.
so that is part of my work, and I shared it was part of my personal quest as well, understanding the history of my great grandparents and grandparents, and therefore understanding myself better. So there's a lot of clearing and purification of maybe the trauma that happened that somehow from this little island rippled all across the planet. And that is one fraction or one reflection of many traumatic threads that happen from various places on the planet to many other places.
I find this so interesting because it begs one to start to think about the planet rather like our body. We think about our body as something that is inextricably we are connected to. We must serve to a degree. We feed it, we look after it, or we don't, and the planet is the same, actually, an entity, a body as well that needs
Yeah.
our care. And also when you're talking about DNA, it made me think about how there's also, and grid lines almost like being the DNA of
Yeah.
Pachamama, that we have a whole pile of DNA that science has called junk, which is inexplicable DNA. Terrible word to call it. That's
It's
what they've
true.
called it, junk. And quite possibly, and I think there's more research going into this now, that junk is becoming an intrinsic part of our potential. Which brings me to the question, and I think you may have even answered it. Is the DNA or the ley lines within our Mother Earth, are they shifting? Are they changing? We know the outer influences of the electromagnetic field are, we can tell that. But are you sensing that the actual grid lines are becoming into greater alignment or shifting?
Yeah. Um, from my understanding and how I've learned from various teachers that have been studying this matter for many years, the ley lines always have been shifting to some degree. And we imagine them when we speak about ley lines as straight linear lines, but they really flow with the geography of the planet. So when we speak about ley lines very often, or the biggest ones very often are underground waterways, right?
Mm.
Basically rivers that run underwater, or if it's in rock formations, is crystal veins
Yeah.
within the earth, because water and crystals uh, are able to channel energy in amplified ways compared to other matter in the soil. And they constantly keep keep moving and changing. But then if we, and I know this is something maybe that I've been observing over the last 15 years, there are more and more people that are becoming aware of that. And there are more and more people that are feeling called to consciously do grid work. So some people, they are consciously called suddenly, oh, I need to go to Central America and visit some of the Mayan pyramids. And so they go there, and by visiting is not only necessarily visiting them as a tourist and taking some photos, but going there with the intention of devotion, of a sacred pilgrimage, of bringing oneself into harmony, but by going these pathways, walking these pathways, or flying these pathways, being there on the land, our electromagnetic frequency harmonizes with the electromagnetic frequency of that site, and something shifts, something changes.
Mm.
And there are more and more people that are feeling consciously called to do so. Like here in Glastonbury, there are people that contact me. So anybody that's listening, if you want to come to Glastonbury, if you feel a call to the ancient Isle of Avalon, get in touch. So people get in touch with me, and for example, there are groups from Singapore that are going to come in the summer that feel called to come here and connect to the mythology here, to the storylines here of King
Mm.
Arthur, the Knights of the
Yeah.
Round Table. Their storylines, they connect to Yeshua and Mary Magdalene as well. There's a lot of wisdom that we can receive for ourselves when we travel to these places, and more people are feeling that calling, and are following these callings.
And when they leave and go back to their countries like little old New Zealand, that I guess they take some of that energy with, and that transfers around the planet. Is that the
Exactly.
case?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Something in the land awakens something within them. They
Mm,
leave something from their vibration and
mm,
frequency here on the land. And then, of course, when they travel back, they will take it into the soil, into the waters, into the earth of their homelands. It's like a beautiful web of
mm,
light that we
yeah.
can create. Yeah.
Mm, so exciting. Yeah. Maybe, in fact, we do it a little bit unconsciously as well sometimes when we just go to those places, even locally, that are
Yeah.
where they're what you potentially call vortexes and hotspots for this, and we're just drawn to them, and we just go there for a day to enjoy ourselves and bathe in that energy without even thinking about it, you know.
That's
Yeah,
that's very true. I think we
yeah.
do grid work all the time because we are connected to the earth in through
Mm,
vibration and frequency all the time. So we do it very often, not consciously, as you
mm,
shared,
mm,
but if we put our intention into a journey as like a sacred pilgrimage, which not even ancient cultures, recent cultures, and nowadays people still do. They go on pilgrimages to
mm,
specific places for healing, to ask for healing, or
mm,
to get maybe some wishes fulfilled, or
mm,
just to share their gratitude. And that is working with that electromagnetic field of the earth more intentionally or more consciously. But we do it all the time, even if we are not aware of it. Here in the UK, there's been a real revival of pilgrimages, like not in like an old religious way, but there are more and more people like myself and other people guiding people on these ancient pathways of remembrance, because that reflection of the earth can allow us to reconnect with our own personal truth. And the elders, the wisdom keepers of the land that were still connected to the wisdom that the land held, they chose these spots, these pathways, not for no reason. There was a specific significance. So
mm.
here in the southwest of England, there's so many magical landscapes and stone circles. After living in Bali, I wouldn't have consciously chosen England somehow because I was seeing myself being based in a warmer environment,
Mm,
to be
mm,
honest, in a warmer
mm,
climate.
mm.
But there was something about the magic of these lands here that really drew me here and has kept me here since, and I'm loving it.
Yeah. Shamir, is there anything you would like to bring through for us all today? Is there any message you would like to leave us with?
If there's a message, I would say be courageous in your life to listen and feel deeply. Like when I say listen, listen to your heart. And very often in our lives, we have a lot of layers that surround our heart, layers of maybe hurt or pain, so protection, or maybe conditioning or programming where our mind speaks louder than our heart. So the message would be to be courageous and listen and feel into your heart. What does your heart want to say? What does your heart want to share? And where does your heart want to lead you? And very often, if we want to follow where our heart wants to lead us, again, we have to be courageous. Because if you want to follow our heart, we might have resistance from friends, from family. But from my experience, it is truly worthwhile thing to do is to follow our heart's yearning, because nobody is going to make it out of this life alive. So if we don't follow what our heart really yearns for, and we want to please others, we somehow miss the great chance and opportunity that we have in this human life to really live life to its fullest, to its full capacity, and experience the full richness of life.
Beautiful.
And maybe with that message, if it's okay,
Mm.
I would love to share one prayer,
Beautiful.
if that.
Please. Yeah.
And this prayer is called Bramkavich, and it's the translation is the armor of Brahma, the armor of the divine, and it's a recitation of 32 names of the goddess. And the goddess to protect our pathways, and also the goddess to clear the evil within us, to clear ignorance within us. And by clearing the ignorance within us, we can walk the path of courage and the path of truth. And of course, as we shared, our inner world is a reflection of the outer world. If that ignorance is cleared within, it also clears the ignorance around
Beautiful.
us.
Beautiful. Okay.
ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਬ੍ਰਹਮ ਕਵਚ खरखंडा अस्सी अरगरतरम नष्टक्षतरी विश्वबाल भूपाल पचपल पचरंग चतरी राजमंडा प्रचंडा ईश्वरी किरवार है शक ब्रह्मी वैष्णवी पवानी तू तरवार है नित ज्योति मुक्तदायक तारता कृपान है चंडका मंडका मृतका जगजाननी खाल का गुणखान है पवमान का कलहान का रतपान का जगमान है एक अवश ब्रह्मा को बाती सा पड्डे जोनि छतरी रंजीत लह निर्भीत रह रित सिद्ध पावे अतरी ले वेद पेचो पड्डे वित प्रभैस्य तान सुख संपदा तान ताम तान अरोग सूद्र पाए सुख कंपता ए बोला हर गोविंद खा सुनो खालसा बीर फतेह पाओ मैदान में पकड़ा शमशीर धोरा या विनामुचार वित पुनः करे प्रयोग पात सवलख हवन कर जीत जंगता भोग या विनामुचार वित पुनः करे प्रयोग पात सवलख हवन कर जीत जंगता भोग वाहेगुरु जी का खालसा वाहेगुरु जी की फतेह सत श्री अकाल
Very good. That's it.
वाहेगुरु।
Mm. Thank you so much. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
my honor, my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. Thank you for your questions.
I will get you to just say out loud your website, and I will put all your contacts also in the story notes. So, what is your website where people can find you?
It's grid, GRID, activations, all in one word, .com.
Beautiful.
Find me there, and also on social media, grid.activations on Instagram. Reach out, and looking forward to connecting more and connecting
Yay.
deeper.
Yay. Thank you so much, Shamir. Been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my honor, my pleasure. Thank you too, dear Susie.